This is Gavs101. I'm continuing my mid-stake series at PLO 600, and I'm going to be using the same footage that we watched last time, so it's all the same players. Top left table, table 1, top right, table 2, bottom left, table 3, and bottom right, table 4. So we're going to be looking at the same things. We're going to be looking to avoid the regulars, pick on the weaker players, and exploit any weaknesses that we have in our opponents. So on table 1, we've got ace 5, queen 3 with the ace suited. It's a really nice high-low hand, or a pretty decent high-low hand, but not really a great Omaha hand. And if the limper was a very, very weak player, then I think it's okay to isolate with this hand if you're not going to be getting 3-bet a lot out of the blinds, or if the button isn't particularly loose. But against Kipper, I'm not really going to be targeting him because I think he's a good hand reader. He makes it difficult to play against him. He will play back at me. He won't just let me bully him and out-aggress him out of pots. So he's not the kind of person that I want to be targeting with that sort of hand. With Kipper, I really just want to be playing my hands for value and exploiting the fact that he plays too many hands, limps too many hands. So that's something that I want to be exploiting out of Kipper, but not just trying to isolate him with fairly junky cards. On table 4, this is a standard open for me, but we've got a short stack in the small blind as Strata, who will be re-raising me quite light, and he'll be re-raising me with a lot of rundowns, which dominate my rundown. So that's not really something that I want to happen, and I also don't want Kipper to flap me on the button, because with the top gap in my hand and only having a 9 high flush draw, it makes my hand considerably weaker. So it's not really a hand I want to be playing out of position, and Kipper's going to be playing probably about, I think, in the region of about 40% of his hands on the button. So if I raise his hand on the cutoff, I'm being flattered by Kipper on the button about 40% of the time, and he's going to play a pot in position against me. And it's not the end of the world, but it's something that I'd like to try and avoid if possible, because it's much better spots for me than that. So that would be a standard open, but I fold in that situation. And on table 2, I think my hand does well multi-way. And I'm happy to get it to go multi-way there. Turbo 327 hasn't shown a tendency to limp re-raise, so I don't need to worry about that. The flop comes 325, middle set, and a gut shot. We've got the blockers to the nuts, and I considered just checking here because I wasn't quite sure what I got value from, but I think that the pot gets checked around too much, and if I got called by one of the deeper stacks, like by Big Bad Devil, we can barrel the turn and try and get him off a wheel if he does call, because it looks very strong when we lead into 4 people. We've got the blockers to the nuts, so a wheel can't be very comfortable calling a second large pot size bet on the turn. So I'd be happy to carry on barreling there, as we've always got outs if we get called. And I think it's very difficult for him to call 2 barrels and even 3 barrels if it came to that. So that would be my reason for just continuing to barrel off there. If we get raised, it's kind of a sticky situation. Not really 100% sure what I'd do. I'm not 100% sure what I'd do there. I'd probably be inclined to fold. Obviously, we'd be priced into calling against Turbo 327s. He's only got 50 big blinds in front of him. The pot was quite big already, but Good Paw is a little bit closer, and Big Bad Devil I think it would be a fold because he's sitting with what's that, about 160 big blinds or something. So I think that would be a fold. On table 3, I raise it up with decent queens and get flattered by Kipper on the button, and I would usually continuation bet this flop, but Kipper will make it awkward by raising this flop quite a lot, bluff raising this flop, semi-bluff raising this flop, and I'm never in good shape if I do call his raise on the flop. So apart from the times he's bluff raising, but then he's going to give up on the turn, or continue when he's got enough equity to continue. So out of position, it's a really bad spot for me, and I really don't want to get raised on this board. So I check against Kipper, but it's only because of Kipper's tendencies that I'm checking this flop. Against most, I would just continuation bet here, but he'll be floating me and betting scare cards and just making it very difficult for me to play the hand profitably. So I opt to check the flop. And now I don't see what I get value from if I bet the turn, so I opt to check the turn again. But I think Kipper will stab here a lot. If he's got air in his range, or if he picks up some sort of straight draw, I think he bets there a lot of the time after I check twice. And so I would probably be calling a bet there, and because Kipper would follow up, if the board texture doesn't change, I would probably have to call if the board texture didn't change there. When it comes to the river, I don't think that he checks. I don't think that he checks kings or aces there twice. So I make a thin bet for value. And get called by jacks there. Might be a little bit thin, but I like it against Kipper. He's a bit coolly, and we have to try and exploit that by making thinner value bets. I just think he very rarely has a better hand than me there on the river with the way the action played out. On table 4, we've got this player, Srixon, has joined the table. I've seen him build up some very, very big stacks, playing very, very loose aggressive. He 3-bets a lot of junk, and if people don't adjust properly, he manages to get away with it. If he flops well, and it's one of the things in Omaha that you can get away with for a long time, 3-betting your junky hands, because they can flop well. Even the worst Omaha hand can flop really well. So they can. I think a lot of people can be fooled into thinking they're a lot better than they are, by 3-betting these junky hands and hitting flops. But he's not 3-betting the right type of hands to be profitable out of position or in position. So I wanted to talk about this hand on table 4. We had basically nothing until the river. We checked it down until we made a straight on the river, and then I didn't see what I got value from, so I checked behind. And we see that good pour there has limped in the small blind with bad jacks, flop top set, and not bet out on the flop there. And the reason he's not doing that is because I've played a few hands with him. He knows I'm aggressive, and so he's adjusting to. There's no way that he's folding to my flop bet. He'd be definitely calling my flop bet. He'd probably be calling my turn bet as well if I bet again. And this is something that people are doing and adjusting to my aggressive play, and this is something you need to watch out for when people start adjusting like this, because instead of now betting my junky hands, I should be, if I know that people are slow playing their hands on me, I should be looking to play my hands more straightforwardly. And if you think that you might have a sort of spew image at the table, then it's something you should be doing, is looking to exploit this by changing it up. And I think, as I said before, like a big problem of mine is playing too many tables and not taking in enough information and realizing when people are adjusting to me. And so it's something that I'm going to do recently is move down to 4 tables. As I've been making these videos, I've been realizing I concentrate so much better on the game when I'm playing 4 tables, and I realize what's going on so much better. And you don't realize how much information you miss when you play sort of 6+ tables until you start playing 4 tables again. So yeah, something I'm going to go back to, and I think it's something I'd recommend to everybody if you're struggling. Just cut down the number of tables you're playing. Even if you don't want to play 4 tables, there's nothing wrong with just playing 1 table and really concentrating on the action, and you learn so much, and you're so much more concentrated on the game. So it really is something I'd recommend. A flat jacks against Strata here, which possibly is a bit loose, seeming as he doesn't actually have any money behind. It gets 3-bet by Kipper in the small blind, and his 3-bet percentage is so low. He has started 3-betting more recently, but I'd say he has aces here like 97% of the time, and so I can't really call. I can't really call there with my jacks. I don't really have enough implied odds. Seeing as he doesn't have much money behind. My hand doesn't do well against aces. On table 4, I would usually just happily 3-bet this hand and get it in against the short stack. But this is the first time I'd seen him raise pot, and I think it made me play this hand a bit weakly in retrospect. In general, I don't think there's anything wrong with just 3-betting and getting it in there. Our hand is very, very strong, and even against a tight opening range, I think we're doing pretty well there. But it's just the fact that he'd been min raising and limping and I hadn't seen him raise pot this whole session, so it actually made me play this hand very weak. And I guess it's okay to go with your reads if your reads are correct, but as a general rule, I'd say against a short stack raising there, you should just be 3-betting and getting it in. But I mean, there's a lot to be said for looking at bet sizing tells, and timing tells as well can be quite telling. If you manage to pick up on these things, it's another thing which I don't think you really pick up on when you're playing too many tables. But if you are going to be playing less tables, it's really some things you should be noticing. So yeah, that was the reason for not 3-betting and getting it in there. But I think the standard play there should be to just 3-bet and get it in. The fact that our jacks are double suited and we have the ace king to go with them makes them very strong jacks. They're going to flop very well. And even if you get it in against an overpair, I wouldn't be surprised if we had sort of about 40% equity against a higher pair hand there. I think against a decent player like good poor, I don't want to be defending bad jacks in the big blind on table 2. My implied odds are going to be limited against him. I'm not going to be able to bluff raise him off too many flops because he'll start floating me and adjusting, and he's not going to be stacking off too light. So I don't. Yeah, I think it's a leak there if you're defending those bad jacks out of position against a good player. Against someone ridiculously spewy, who's going to stack off really light on the flop, then it's probably okay. But I played a few hands with good poor. I don't think he will be at all. So yeah, I don't think that's good to be defending them there. And again, ace queen 3-4 kind of looks a bit prettier than it is. I think not really that strong a hand. The kind of hand on a weaker sort of table, I wouldn't mind sort of limping along if there was a few limps, completing in the small blind maybe. But yeah, it looks a bit weaker than it is. Same with the hand on table 1 there, double suited sixes there, king 6-6-5 double suited. Looks kind of nice, but in fact it's quite weak. And if you get 3-bet, you can't really call the 3-bet profitably, I don't think. So I don't really want to be opening it under the gun, even though we are 5-handed on that table. 9-10-4-5 on table 3 is another junky hand. I won't be playing that, even in position. And especially against big bad devils under the gun raising range. More junk on table 1, more junk on table 4. And there goes Zingy DNA with his min raises again on table 4. You can see Strixon has 3-bet here. Big Bad Devil's 4-bet. And I think Kipper makes I think that's a mistake. I don't know Kipper's hand in this actual hand, but I think that's a mistake with a large number of hands there to call there. Unless he's got some sort of premium rundown. I think if he's got some sort of premium rundown, he should probably be 3-betting in the first place. My guess is he has something along the lines of 6, 7, 8, 9, 5, 6, 7, 8 here. Or he would be snap calling this flop with a pair. I can't really see what he can have that would totally miss that flop. Possibly a double pair hand. I'm not sure if it would be profitable to call with a double pair hand there, but Assuming his Big Bad Devil doesn't have that much money left over. And that's exactly the kind of hand that I mean that looks a lot stronger than it is. King 10, 8, 5. There's a double gap in between the top two cards, and there's a double gap also between the bottom two cards, and a single gap between the 10 and the 8. It's a very, very gappy hand. It's actually a very weak hand, although it looks a lot nicer than it is. And 3-betting that hand out of position is not going to be profitable, especially against Big Bad Devil's opening range. But the funny thing is about Omaha is even against his hand there, he's probably not worse than 40% or something. But it's clearly going to be a losing proposition over the long run. But you can go on very long streaks of hitting very nice flops, and that's how people who play like that build up very big stacks. But if he continues to play like that over a long period of time, he will end up losing. I think you find a lot of Omaha players who are very spewy with their pre-flop play too many hands, or 3-bet the wrong kind of hands out of position, call too many hands out of position. But once they get to the flop, generally play quite well. I can think of quite a lot of players who are like that. I think you can get away with that to a certain extent, but I think as you move up limits, and I think as people get better at exploiting the fact that you're playing too many hands, like 3-betting your lighter, then you're not going to be able to get away with it. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for these people who play a lot of hands. And just because someone plays a lot of hands pre-flop doesn't necessarily mean you should assume that they're going to be spewing off chips post-flop and just cool them down ridiculously light, because a lot of people do play a lot of hands pre-flop, but they really actually post-flop play quite solidly. So you need to watch out for that. On table 4, again, I don't want to continuation bet this flop against Kipper. I prefer to delayed continuation bet it, because if he raises me, I can't really call, and he will be bluff raising this flop, and semi-bluff raising this flop, with hands that are flipping against me and hands that have me absolutely crushed. So when he raises me, I can't actually really call. And when he leads out on the turn, which he will do a huge percentage of the time when I don't bet these flops, I think I'm ahead of his range, and because I have been with Kipper checking the flop with nothing and then just raising his turn bets with nothing, I think I need to balance this out a bit by raising his turn bets with semi decent hands. I think if we get called here, if we get flattered, I would put him on a wrap like 5, 6, 7, probably with spades if he calls. If he goes over the top, he's probably got us beat, but we're going to have to get it in because we're going to be getting such good odds. And we're not going to be in good shape then. So maybe the better play might have been to flat this turn bet and flat any river that doesn't complete an obvious draw. But there aren't actually really that many river cards that don't complete a draw, because the Jack and the Queen and the 10 and the 3 and the 5 and the 7 and the 8 all complete, plus spades, all complete some sort of draw. So it's not really that many safe river cards for us to call him down on. And I think he will be following up on quite a few river cards. So I just wanted to, number one, balance my play, as I've been raising the turn with nothing here, and I'll be raising the turn with draws. So I want to balance my range and raise him with made hands as well. And I also just want to let him know that he can't just randomly pot the turn every time I check back the flop. I want him to be more cautious about doing this, because it makes my life quite difficult if he's just going to be potting every turn and following up on rivers. So that was basically my thinking behind the hand. There's not actually that many safe rivers for me. And it's only the fact that Kipper has such a wide leading range on the turn that means I can do that. And I also know that he's capable of laying down hands. So he could even be laying down a hand which has us beat there. And he'll certainly be laying down hands that have decent equity against us. So I flat queens in the small blind there because I expect the big blind to come along a lot of the time, and in a multi-way pot, it's exactly the kind of hand I want to be, exactly the kind of pot I want with sort of junky queens. I flop the nuts and I want to lead out on this wet board into 4 people to protect my hand. Premium rundown on table 4. I'm always going to raise that. We get flattered by Kipper on the button, and he's got a pot size bet left, and we're just going to get that all in now that we turn. We don't have the nuts anymore, but we turn a set to go with our straight. I don't think Kipper's betting anything but the nuts if we check to him really there. He'll be playing for pot control, I think, if he has some sort of set. Or he'll be going for a free card if he does have hearts. I flop nothing on table 4, and I'm going to continuation bet. We get him to fold all his jacks, queens, any sort of gut shot type hands that he might have. I don't think he's going to peel one off with. And I can't win the pot if you don't bet. So I bet a lot when I flop air. It's a better idea to check behind your sort of hands that you don't want to get raised off, marginal hands. But when you flop air, unless you're getting check raised a lot or floated a lot or played back at, then you want to be betting your air a lot. So another situation on table 3 where we're going to be sandwiching Kipper in between this our continuation bet and this loose player. He doesn't know whether this loose player is waiting to call a bet, so I don't think he can mess around too much on this board when I continuation bet here. So I'm happy to just continuation bet with my top pair and kickers. Backdoor flush draw. Ace 4, 7, 5 double suited, decent hand. I would usually lead a lot here on table 4, but because Big Bad Devil continuation bet so much, I'm happy to let him continuation bet this ace high flop. I think it's an easy laydown on table 3. I think Kipper here either has some sort of wrap, which has us flipping at best, or he plays a lot of hands and he likes to play these low pair hands. I wouldn't be surprised for him to have a set on this flop. I don't think he's bluff raising all that often with this loose guy in the pot. So yeah, I think it's an easy laydown there. I think I have to lead the turn for protection here. For a min raise, I'll play those junky queens on table 1. And I think this is a spot where I should be leading, but I think I check in the actual footage. I think that's a mistake. Happy Chappie's never raising me with worse here. I don't think Kipper will be bluff raising this kind of flop. He likes to bluff. He likes to bluff sort of lower card flops and paired boards, not so much higher boards. On table 4, we get check raised here by good pour. And I don't think there's any reason why he should think we can't have a hand here. I can't recall being in a situation where he's check raised the turn before, so I don't exactly know what his turn check raising range here is. But I would speculate there could possibly be some 10 Jack Queen in there. But I think it's much more likely that he knows that me and Big Bad Devil are aggressive players. He doesn't think the turn is going to get checked around very much. With two aggressive players left at behind him. So I think with his sets and with his with Ace Queen, I think a check raise is a very suitable option for him here. The fact of the matter is that when I do get my money in here against Ace Queen or against a set of eights, I'm in such bad shape that I need to be fairly sure that Good Paw is full of it here to get the rest of my money in, seeming as I'm going to be risking another 125 plus 347 that he's got, so another 460 odd, 470 odd dollars. I mean, I've only invested about $70 in this pot. Yeah, the fact that I'm so crushed if he does actually have Ace Queen or happens to have a set of eights or fives or even aces that he checked behind on the flop. I need to be fairly sure that he's monkeying around here to call, and I'm not convinced that he is monkeying around here that much. So I let it go. Again, I should lead this turn. I don't know why I didn't lead this turn on table 1. It's something that I will be looking out for, though, to see if he is check raising these flops a lot, these turns a lot in those sorts of spots. I could lead here with the blockers, but my hand has showdown value on table 1, so I'm happy to check it behind. And because we played it badly, we allowed him to spike a set on the river. So, yeah, we should have led the flop, we should have led the turn. I don't know why we didn't. That's bad. Don't do this. Do not let people check it down with junk and then get there. Jacks and eights, it's a pretty strong hand. I'm happy to raise it up there. We're definitely miles ahead of Donald Trump's limping range. It's actually not a bad spot to continuation bet here, because Big Bad Devil is sandwiched by Donald Trump here, so I don't think he's messing around too light on this flop. And Donald Trump doesn't look like the kind of player that messes around too much on the flop, and he probably gives us respect for raising out the small blind. So, yeah, it's a decent spot to continuation bet there. Probably should be a continuation bet. By the turn, I don't see myself getting called by worse, so I see no need to bet, but I could well be snapping off a bet. Especially by Donald Trump. I don't think he has a 6 very often here at all. Even if he does have a 6, we've got a lot of outs. So I think that's an easy call. When Big Bad Devil flats as well, I'm done with the hand. He either has a king or a 6 here. At least one king and at least one 6. There's no point getting tricky on table 2 against Kipper. Because he pays me off very light. So I just want to bet for value and try and get all my money in. So I was trying to work out what the best way to do that was. I wanted to make a small sort of bet on the turn to make it look like I was just getting him to fold out any jacks, queens, kings that he might have just flat called my flop bet with. I wanted to leave enough on the river so that he could conceivably think I was still bluffing. Because if I make it so that there's only sort of $70 left in like a $300 pot on the river, then I don't think he ever thinks I'm bluffing in that spot, because I don't think he expects him. I expect him to fold. So I wanted to leave enough on the river there to make it look like I could still be bluffing him. I think he pays me off with any sort of decent flush there. My hand doesn't really do well against JFG's 3-betting range out of the blinds. He's quite tight. Queen's hands in general a lot weaker than they seem, especially against a tight 3-betters range. More junk on each table. I don't think there's ever a case for playing those hands. Heads up possibly, but only in position, and only if you're going to be taking down the big blind a lot. More double suited junk on each table. In table 4, it's not a great table for us anymore. We've got a tight short stacker, 3-betting a lot of the time, which means that we can't open as many hands as we'd like to. We've got Big Bad Devil, who's a decent regular, quite taggy. And then we've got Kipper, who, although is a bit of a station and a bit loose pre-flop, he's definitely not a bad player. Possibly a live player that's hasn't quite adjusted to internet play. I'd say that's probably the most likely case for Kipper, because he's a very good hand reader. He snaps off some really good bluffs in situations where it's impossible for me to have the hand that I'm representing. And I think because he was so loose, I tried to barrel him off too many hands when I first started playing against him. It was definitely the wrong strategy against him, because he is just a bit of a station, and you just have to really just bet your hands for value against him. I bet the turn here. I didn't want to bet the flop, because I think he flats me way too wide. I definitely think he peels one off there with 2 backdoor flush draws, a middle pair, and a gut shot. He definitely peels one off against me there, and then when the 3 comes on the turn, do I barrel again, or he's probably going to call another bet there, and I'd have to triple barrel to get him off it. But yeah, puts me in tough spots, difficult situations. So I check the flop. When he checks the flop as well, I make a small little stab on the turn. I expect to get called a decent amount, but I know that I've got outs if he does call. So I don't need to win the pot all that often to make that little stab on the turn. Just gets him to fold all his sort of pair hands that completely miss the flop there. But when I do get called, I'm just giving up. And if Zamlo had more money, I would probably flat there. And the fact that we've got Strixon, who likes to 3-bet in the small blind, makes me not want to call that. And table 3. Donald Trump doesn't continuation bet very much, so I want to lead the flop on table 1. Sorry, Happy Chappy. We've got the blockers to the straight there, so makes me more inclined to bet again. Um, but there might be a case for checking because Happy Chappy is quite passive, and he probably doesn't bet the turn unless he has a straight there. So I think we could just check and just give up if he did bet, because I think he probably checks behind all his worst 2-pair hands, and we keep those in. And then I'm not scared by any hand on the river. I'm just going to value bet. Hope that he has the queen high straight to pay me off. Definitely going to be getting in there with my hand on table 3. Possibly could be a slightly too loose open on the button there. So what happened there? The action skipped. Table broke on table 4, and I've opened up now one table of from full tilt. Just want to go back to that ace king 8-2. I know I said I would be opening pretty much any hand on the button, but against 2 such loose players, ace king 8-2 is a pretty junky hand. Without the ace suited, might be a little bit too loose to open, but I don't think it can really be too big a mistake to open that hand on the button. Yeah. So I've started playing on full tilt a little bit more. I don't really like the software as much as Stars, but I think the action seems to be quite good, and certainly the anti-tables that they have, they seem to attract a lot of action, which is quite nice. On table 1, I'm just playing heads up against Donald Trump, waiting for some more players to join. I checked behind the flop, got an open ender, which isn't to the nuts, and a pair of 9s, which is decent showdown value, so I'm happy to just check behind the flop there. Make us straight on the turn, and I can't really fold to Donald Trump, who will be leading this turn with a lot of draws and 2 pairs. And I think against someone with his sort of aggression, I don't think I can really fold to a river barrel, even though he does bet full pot here. And I think when there's 2 possible straights out and 2 possible straights out and someone bets full pot, a lot of the time they're going to have the nut straight, because people know that a lot of the time you're going to have the second nut straight, and they know that you're not going to want to lay down that straight. So people will bet big in those situations. So yeah, that's something to watch out for. But I know that he will barrel off draws there. He's been quite aggressive on the river, so I'm not unhappy with my cooldown there. I think you're going to have to cool down an aggressive player a lot there, and occasionally you won't be right, but that's just the nature of the game. We had Queen 10, 7, 8 down there, and the big blind raised, the button raised it up. We were in the small blind. I don't think you can call there profitably, because your relative position on the flop is going to be bad. I'm definitely going to call this hand in position. I don't see really any any need to be. I don't see any need to be 3-betting that hand, because it does well with a multi-way pot, and we put ourselves in an awkward situation if we get 4-bet as well. So I see no need for that. And Capax Infinity is from playing a lot of pots, playing very aggressively. I think he continuation bets that Queen 2-5 flop a lot, but I'm in a difficult situation because there's another player in the pot. Might be a decent spot to float depending on his barreling frequencies, but I just joined the table, only played 3 hands, so I'm happy just to let that go for the meanwhile. Again, Kipper preventing me opening that hand that I usually would in the cutoff there. I'm definitely going to raise aces when Donald Trump limps. Continuation bet the flop. And get called. And I think on this sort of board, I don't think that Donald Trump has a set very often here. Although he did limp, so it's possible that's in his range. But I think a lot of the time here, I'm getting floated by him with weak hands, maybe one pair plus a gut shot or something like that. And so I just wanted to check and just let him barrel off, look like I was just giving up, and then let him try and take the initiative and try and bet me off my hand. Something you need to do against aggressive players is let them bet your hands for you. So try and trap them. And I kind of get myself into this annoying situation where, because I've played my hand like the way I have to pay him off if he has it here. It's difficult because he hasn't given me any reason to believe that he doesn't have it here. But because every time we have called him down so far, he has had it. But he has been aggressive, and so you can see there, he called us on the flop just with bottom pair and gut shot, and I guess 3 overcards to the board. Turn was a 9. His hand didn't improve, and we checked to him, and as expected, he bet there. And the river comes on the gives him the straight, and it's kind of an unlikely straight for him to have. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a difficult spot there, difficult situation, but the reason for playing my hand the way I did was the fact that I want him to barrel off there when he doesn't have anything. And the fact of the matter is he didn't actually have anything on the turn. He just happened to spike a river card, which is kind of an unlucky card for us because it doesn't look that dangerous, and so I'm more inclined to pay him off on that card. For 4 comes, I think it's easier for us to get away from our hand. But yeah, that card didn't look too much of a danger card for us. So I ended up paying him off there, but the reasoning behind it was just trying to trap him, basically, just trying to trap an aggressive player. So far, hasn't really been working out too well for us, but I will continue to try. And I think that is the way to deal with aggressive players. Heads up, you have to try and trap them. If they're very coolly as well, if they're a bit of a station, then you need to value bet thinly. But we haven't really had any spots where we've been able to do that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with betting the turn there. I just wanted to let him barrel off there. Yeah. I'll go to continuation bet on table 3, but I think the short stack is probably itching to make a move. So from what I've seen of him so far, so I think a much better play is to wait for the turn, wait for the inevitable turn bet when I don't continuation bet the flop, and raise it up. A lot of the time you get these short stackers buying in, and you can just see that they're itching to get their money in, they're itching to gamble, they just want to double up, that's all they want to do, they just want to double up. And you have to watch out for that, because they're going to be I mean, I've seen them check raising ace high flops, with like ace 2 3 5 on like an ace jack queen flop and stuff like that. They're trying to get their money in ridiculously light. They don't care, they're just trying to double up, really. And you need to watch out for that, because you can't continuation bet your air as much. I mean, if you look at him, he's just playing every single hand. He just wants to hit a hand, looking to bluff people off. Just instantly bets that. It's just come to gamble, really, and you need to watch out for that. We made a hand that we didn't want to get raised off with on the turn here, and so I opted to check behind the turn. I think he might raise there a decent amount of the time with blockers. I mean, we didn't know he had the blockers at the time, but it's just a hand that I don't want to get raised off of. So I decided to check back the turn, and then when I do check back the turn when the flush draw misses against his sort of aggressiveness, where I think he's going to be check raising 2-pair on the flop. So the only 2-pair we really have to worry about is aces and jacks that he made on the turn, and with the flush draw missing, I think we have to pay off his river bet there. I would 3-bet on table 3 quite a lot if he had more money, but because he doesn't, I'm happy to flat. On a dry flop, I like to lead out there with flop a straight draw. On table 3, I think that Zamlo has a big pair here, basically always. I think that Olsen probably has an absolute load of junk here. So I'm happy to gamble with my fairly decent rundown here. In a 3-way pot, I think my equity is going to be quite good here. We've got Kipper's dead money in the pot. So I make this sort of little min raise just to try and force Kipper out of the pot, to try and get in with these 2 players. I mean, if I was up against 2 pairs, that would be the ideal situation, but because this guy's come to gamble, I think he has a load of junk here that my hand does well against. Flop quads, and I didn't really know what to do against Kipper. I don't think I'm ever really getting any more money out of him here, because I don't think he ever has. He probably puts me on a big pair. So I don't think he's ever putting any more money in the pot, but I figured maybe I could, if he had something like, if he had maybe good kings here, it's a possibility he could have good kings here. I thought he might call off a little bit. Just a little teaser bet, just out of curiosity. Don't know what they had there. We can probably check that out in Hold'em Manager. I'll review this session in Hold'em Manager when I'm finished. But I've still got a decent amount of material left. So I might leave it there for this time. Yeah, as I said, I've got a decent amount of material left at PLO 600. This table fills up again, and we get into some good spots. Get some good spots to float in 3-bet pots. So yeah, I'll continue this next time.